on the West Her Hotline. Big Bad Morning Show in Baltimore at JCon Sports. Jeremy, thank you, and I mean that sincerely. Are you ready to have another conversation about the same 7 subjects we have every time we talk?
Yeah, man, it's always fun. I was just saying, it's kind of a doozy to start the season off with. And, you look at getting this game out of the way one way or another, who comes out on top, and then you're kind of like, oh, well, I guess it's going to be a while before we see each other again.
Do you like it this way? I talked to our Sal Capaccio last week about that, and he was like more in the mood for a soft open, so to speak, just
ease into it.
Last year, Arizona was here. It's nice to be, one of these elite teams as we are. We can talk like that, but I don't know. There's something cool about this too.
I guess I like a little bit of a mix. I mean, to be honest, football's been away for so long. It's like everybody's dying for it. You could have a bunch of crappy games and teams favored by 7 to 10 points, and watch those types of games. But it's kind of nice to see and look across the board. I think there's like 8 games that are within a field goal or something like that. Yeah. So should be a fun week. And this is the icing on the cake. I mean, it's a huge game on Sunday Night Football.
Yeah. How much do you perceive Baltimore or the Ravens to have poured into this? It feels from a few hundred miles away over here, Jeremy. I'm not seeing constant reference to it, but I've seen a few different items where it's guys want to set the record straight and retribution and that kind of stuff. Like how burned by what happened last January do you think the Ravens feel still?
I think it's saddened a lot of guys crawl, right? Like there's a lot of players who are upset. You had the whole offseason to think about it, and then you see them in game one. Like you shouldn't need any added motivation for a week one NFL or any of one of those games, but the human element comes in, and there are games you circle. And I think there's quite a few guys, and Mark Andrews probably being the main one, that had this game circled.
With Jeremy Conn, again, always so many similarities between the Bills and the Ravens and the rides they've each been on for the last 5+ years. I mean, you do run the risk, to say the least here, of taking the regular season for granted with this attitude. But Jeremy, clearly both teams, what do they need to do differently to get there, execute in the playoffs? For the Bills, that's more on defense. For the Ravens, it's the turnovers, I would say. Maybe you'd say something else or something different.
No, it's turnovers. Because those are the weird – they have a bunch of weird ones. They have the fumble through the end zone, guys that have never fumbling and dropped 2-point conversions. We've seen it every which way, but it's definitely turnovers.
Yeah, so it's not like it's real work, but for us, it's sort of challenging sometimes to come up with narratives, like the Bills and the Ravens will go about their offseason changes, and you can say anything you want about them, but really what matters is 4 months away, probably, unless it really goes off the rails. It's 4 months away, and it's these 1 or 2 plays. I find it tough to criticize the Bills for sort of what they've built. I mean, even saying this now seems a little ridiculous. They've won the division 5 years in a row, but somehow they've got to figure out a way, in Baltimore too, to get into January and be buttoned up and just be better.
See, and I agree wholeheartedly with what you just said, because realistically, the Bills should be a heavy favorite to win their division, even if they lose game one. I still think the Ravens should be a heavy favorite because I don't even know who's on Cincinnati's defense this year. I mean, it just looks dreadful over there. Poor Burrow's arm's going to fall off from throwing it 50 times a game, and God knows what Aaron Rodgers is going to do to the Steelers. So, I think the Ravens should be a heavy favorite to win this division, so it's not like a loss for either team really sets them back as much as you think. The Ravens would then come home and they get the Browns and the return of Joe Flacco to Baltimore. So I don't think it's a huge game in the grand scheme of things if they wind up with the same record or even close. Right. There's the tiebreaker for you.
Yeah, and that is the thing. The Ravens had their turn at that 2 years ago, and we know how that went when they lost to the Chiefs in a very close game. The Bills have never had it, and that has been sort of the thing in the window as these seasons have started for the last, I'd say, 3-4 years now. The first year of Josh Allen being like an MVP caliber player in 2020, I would say, we weren't really thinking about the 1 seed. We were just sort of happy to be, oh, look, they're relevant. They're on at night. Look, the Bills might be really good for a while. Now it's like, all right, get the thing that you haven't done yet. Right? That doesn't guarantee it, just like it didn't for Baltimore 2 years ago. But, man, it'd be nice to get that extra week of rest and not have to play a third game.
There's no question. And I know people don't like throwing it around, but for both teams, it always feels like Super Bowl for bust. You got your franchise quarterback. You know you have a window open, and you want to take advantage of it as much as possible. That's why it was funny in the offseason because Harbaugh said, I hear people saying it's Super Bowl or bust. Those are people that have never won a championship at any level. And I'm going, what else do you want us to say? I mean, you get so close and you don't get there. And again, like home field advantage and having it in a down year for the Chiefs when you guys ran all over them with 200 yards and the Ravens come out with the worst game plan in the history of game plans and still find a way to lose that game. But it's one of those things where it's like, you know, that's the next step they have to take. And it would be nice to see if you guys got home field throughout and how some of these teams would react to playing up there. The same way it is here because I know how loud our stadium gets and all the new features that they've put in. So postseason football is going to be fun this year, and I think we're going to have the usual suspects again.
Jeremy, how comfortable should Harbaugh be? I mean, I know there's a Super Bowl there, and like that gives you a certain amount of, you know, a little longer line of credit with the bank, if you will. But it's been now 8 years of Lamar Jackson, or this is year 8, just like Allen, excuse me, and they haven't gotten there yet. Like people here, I don't know, is there some Baltimore version? We always talk about these similarities. Is there some Baltimore version of 13 seconds that Harbaugh's carrying around in a satchel with him? Because 13 seconds is the flashpoint for every criticism of McDermott. It's not saying that there aren't varied and even very legit criticisms, but it starts there. And, you know, I just wonder, like, how similar that existence is with a coach that already has a Super Bowl, albeit, you know, a long time ago now.
Oh, man, there's so many similarities there because there's a ton of spots we can bring up of what were you doing there, what were you thinking, even going back to when they were facing the Patriots in that Flacco era, and you're looking at it going, okay, the clock's running down, just call a timeout. No, I don't want to ice my kicker on a short field goal. And that's when we, Cundiff became a term that people would use. You don't want to get Cundiff out in the middle of nowhere, you know. So I think you go back to Harbaugh, and it's a lot of clock management stuff. And I don't mind the aggressiveness. I love analytics and understanding that it's just information. You do with it what you see fit. It's just giving you odds and percentages of what you should do. But I do think there has to be some sort of feel to it. And when they won in 2012, I mean, I don't even know if people remember this nationally, but at one point there was this thing that people were doing in Baltimore called Flaccoing after he threw a pick six in the Denver game, and he was laying down face first. So there were like viral videos going around here of people, quote unquote, Flaccoing. So you got a quarterback that got hot and threw 11 touchdowns and no picks in the postseason. It was an amazing run, but by no means was that a Super Bowl caliber team at the beginning of the year. They just got hot at the right time. And I think he's been riding that all the way up into this Lamar Jackson wave because, you know, he put all his chips in the middle after drafting him and benching Joe Flacco midway through the season, and they end up making the playoffs. But he's been riding on that for a while, and at some point it's got to pay off in the end game because everybody here thinks they've had the best team on paper the past 3 years.
Oh, for once to get hot at the right time around here. Like that would just that'd be cool. Even a couple of years ago, Jeremy, when the Bills ended up 11-6. It's the year of the Ravens being the 1 seed, but it was a bumpy year for the Bills, and you would still hear people say, "No, this is really better," because like the Manning Colts didn't win on their best season. Yeah, right. It's just sort of like the adversity would help them, and I guess I have to listen to that. Well, we've covered some of the past and even looked to the future. In the present, this game, how are the Ravens different for this game than when they were last year?
So, look, I don't want to sound like a broken record sometimes with this, but their roster is loaded. They actually had 3 undrafted free agents make their roster. They cut players that were supposed to be a big part of the rotation because they saw something in these young guys. I mean, if Jair Alexander's back there, you have 5 first-round picks in your secondary. The kid they drafted, Mike Jones, it's one of the worst-kept secrets, I think. He's if he didn't have his allegations off the field, that guy would have been a top 10 pick, top 15 pick. And he looks like he's going to be an amazing pass rusher. So they've added on that side of the ball. They've solidified their offensive line. You had questions at guard. You bring in Hopkins as kind of a veteran receiver, third down, red zone stuff. I just feel like they have depth everywhere, and this team looks good overall. And the kid Tyler Luke that's coming in, he looked great ever since his first week in camp. So I feel like the team is loaded. This is a team that should be poised to take that next step, but I'm sure you guys feel the same way up in Buffalo.
Mike Green, the second-round pick, linebacker, edge rusher from the Ravens. They've got a couple other guys. Owa, who's been around. I know there was a guy, is it Owa or Ojabo, who missed a season?
Yeah, Ojabo missed the season. Kyle Van Noy's still here.
Yep.
And we were just talking about it. He had 12.5 sacks last year. This scheme is so great for guys if you are one of those lunch pail guys that'll go to work.
So Trey White is here. He was on the field for Baltimore in that playoff loss to the Bills, and he's iffy for this game. I think in terms of the Bills, like the secondary is the concern, if there is one, about this team. Trey White didn't practice today. Maybe plays Sunday night, but maybe not. He was hurt a couple of weeks ago. There are questions at safety.
Benford's a little dinged up too. So
they put Keon Coleman on the injury report today too with a groin injury.
Yeah.
So the Bills aren't in perfect shape for this game.
Yeah, with the Ravens, I mean, the likely stuff was the key thing, wondering when he's going to come back. And they didn't put him on IR, which leads you to believe it may not be this week, obviously, but maybe we're looking at the home opener or week 3 against the Lions. But, yeah, with Jair getting off of the injury report and practicing, I think that means he's going to play on Sunday.
What is the importance of Isaiah Likely? I hear many things about him. I'm a fantasy player, and there are people in fantasy who think he's, a weapon waiting to burst as a tight end 1 in the league, and then others who maybe are more negative toward him. I mean, the Ravens with Andrews and Likely are kind of an unusual matchup, but if no Likely in this game as expected, what will that mean?
Yeah, I mean, the Ravens love going to a lot of 12 and 22 personnel and having 2 tight ends out there. And with Isaiah Likely, though, I mean, look, I've watched this guy play and watching the league for a long time and being a fantasy player. If he was tight end 1, he could easily be the best tight end in the league. Now, it's going to be tough to be that here in Baltimore because there's so many mouths to feed. And let's be honest, everything's going to be predicated off the run with Derrick Henry back there. So I think you may have seen it in week 1 last year when they threw like a little swing pass to him and he took it 55 yards to the house against the Chiefs. He's one of those guys that's a freak of nature. I think like Darren Waller type. He can run over you and he can run by you. So I do feel like if he gets that tight end 1 opportunity, that it's a guy that could put up big-time numbers.
But he is expected to miss this game, right? And
I mean, he tweeted out something that was weird, some sort of a stopwatch picture. I don't know what the hell it was about, but all these guys are being very vague on social media.
Right.
And everybody's like, is he playing or not? But he was out on the field today, but he wasn't practicing.
Okay. The other injury that I think is notable, I don't know, this might be the first time I've ever asked a guest like you, Jeremy, about a fullback. But Ricard is such a weapon and such a unique player and gives them so much variety formationally. And he's nursing something. Do you think he goes?
Yeah, I mean, they're saying it's this whole thing where they're very secretive with injuries and calling it like a soft tissue issue. So in my mind, that probably means hamstring or quad or calf or something. But they haven't really come out and said what it was. And you're right. So they do have options. We actually had the question this week, would it be worse if they're missing Jair Alexander or Patrick Ricard? And a lot of us felt Ricard. There is a kid on the practice squad they could call up, but it's very hard to replace the production that guy brings. I mean, he literally, when he got in the league, was playing defensive tackle and playing fullback / tight end. So, and he just loves pancaking guys on the other side, and he just eats it up. So he's one of those guys that you come from a blue-collar city, you're going to fall in love with him. So I don't know if he's going to go, but he did not practice.
With Jeremy Conn, so if this is a different, I'm not sure this is a necessarily different answer than talking about the team at large, but Lamar Jackson and Jeremy, the discourse around him after another great season, but the hiccups in the playoff loss. I mean, there used to be real skeptics about him, and that would frustrate me, and I'm not even there, but that would frustrate me to listen to. Has that completely dried up, or do those people cling to his mistakes?
Well, there's still some people that are going to be stubborn, and you hear it here in Baltimore that, like, I don't like this style. I prefer a guy to sit back there, drop back 40 times, and throw the football. It was nice to hear that, like, Bill Polian apologized, saying that he would only draft him as a wide receiver, and after you win 2 MVPs, I guess that's what happens. But, like, you look at a couple of the things of – you can understand why people initially weren't big on it. You were seeing some weird throwing motions, missing receivers, trying to get better at the deep ball. And it was almost like when Happy Gilmore learned how to putt. I mean, once he kind of got into rhythm and figured it out, he was going to be a problem. And he's one of the most – look, I was a Peyton Manning truther, and I see a lot of similarities in he can't win the big one type thing. Mm-hmm. And when you finally do, we'll see if you get credit for it, or did you beat a subpar team and nobody wants to say, hey, yeah, you finally won the Super Bowl. But he's got to get there at some point to solidify his career.
Yeah, that's so true.
Narratives are very sticky. Yeah, my experience talking about Peyton Manning in this room, Mike and I have been in here together for over 20 years, Jeremy, and so we ran really his whole career. After he beat the Colts beat the Patriots, and then they won the Super Bowl. The next year, it felt like people still didn't think Peyton Manning could ever win the big game.
It didn't happen.
Like we reverted to, T. Martin won a national title at Tennessee and he couldn't. Like it just sticks to you. It just people don't want to let go.
Yeah. And it's hard to get rid of. Even when you Peyton Manning has a winning record against Tom Brady in the postseason. That may not mean much to people, but when you start throwing things around, it's like, yeah, I mean, I understand that things weren't great, but actually go watch the last 2 minutes of a lot of those playoff games and see the defense giving up, what was a game-winning drive beforehand. So there's a lot of things you can look at. And I'm not saying he's not devoid of blame, but
sure.
I hated seeing that, and I'm seeing it with Lamar now.
It reminds me of golf almost. Remember John Feinstein's book, The Majors? His first chapter is about how, winning one is great, but you really need to win two. And once you win two, and Manning eventually did win a second with Denver, but we were all sort of fixated on how bad he looked.
Right.
Like
he was shot putting the football at that point. I think he had it behind his ear and just trying to get down the field.
It was about, for the first half or so of his career, it was about, well, actually, it's a team game, and then he wins on the heels of the Denver defense and, everything else that happened before that. Like, well, now we're just going to look at it from a different angle.
We have kind of hopped all around here, Jeremy, but I want to hear you talk a little about the receiving core here. We covered the tight ends, and we know about Andrews, and likely he's not likely to play. Sorry, not trying to be cute, but what are we talking about at receiver here this year? And is there somebody ready to take a step?
Yeah, I mean, look, Zay Flowers, he wasn't in the postseason game last year, and he's a guy that Lamar's kind of built a great rapport with. I do think you're going to see a heavy dose of Mark Andrews in this game. Just because he's going to soak up all those opportunities. You have the backup tight end, Charlie Kohler, who they don't throw too often, but every once in a while there'll be a wrinkle in there. I think you'll see D-Hop as that third wide receiver. He's looked good in camp. He's Father Time's caught up to him, but I still think he has a decent catch radius, and we could see him in some red zone and third down type options. And when you look at the other guy, Rashad Bateman, man, it's something to watch those guys work together because he and Lamar weren't on the same page. And last year it finally kind of came together. And Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman, two of the best receivers at separation in the league. So they have options there. It's a nice group. And now there's even depth with the kid Tez Walker they drafted a few years ago and Tylan Wallace.
Not to mention Derrick Henry is on this team.
Right.
My most drafted Ravens player, I think, would be Keaton Mitchell. Because he has just been so efficient and explosive, and he seems all the way back. I mean, he was hurt 2 years ago, and then last year didn't happen. But he had moments this preseason. Do you think, does he come in over Justice Hill? Do you think Baltimore will use Mitchell in this game?
So I think Mitchell will get a few touches a game, but honestly, I was saying this to somebody else, and the reason why I love grabbing Keaton Mitchell at the end of drafts is because if something happens to Derrick Henry or if he misses a period of time, I still think Justice Hill stays in his same role, gets a few more carries, a few more touches, but ultimately Keaton Mitchell is the guy that's going to get those touches. And you're right, he's so explosive. He's so small, though, so it's the one thing you worry about is how many hits he's going to take, but he's clearly a guy that could take it to the house any given moment.
Is there anything, before we let you go, Jeremy, is there anything about this Bills team from the Ravens' perspective that you think can be exploited? I mean, in that playoff game, the Bills, what were they, 4 yards per play? Allen's numbers are super small, but they get the win with the help of those turnovers. Is it a matchup where you think that can happen again? I think Baltimore would take that kind of defensive performance in this game Sunday.
Oh, absolutely. And look, I think the Ravens are going to be a top 5 offense, top 5 defense this year. And again, but the one thing that keeps getting brought up in Baltimore is how Derrick Henry's bigger than all the linebackers and Patrick Ricard is as big as most of the linemen. So it's always a thing where, whether it's bullish or not, everybody thinks that the Ravens are going to come in and just bully their way and run all over smaller fronts. But you look at some of the schemes and things of what's happened in years past, like what happened in the postseason game last year. Why wasn't it better than that? So I think that's something that you're always going to look forward to is a heavy dose of Derrick Henry. And since it's an opening night game, maybe he gets a few more touches than what you'd expect.
Very good. Well, thanks for your time as always. It should be a great season. And who knows, maybe we'll reach out again in January.
Yeah, awesome, man. I'd love to do it again.